Hi, everybody. Hi, Kardashim. Love you too. Hi, Herb. Hey, everyone. Another monthly live chat with me, Magna Gopal, just in case you're wondering whose live chat you're on. But considering you're on my channel, I guess that's self evident at this point. Wherever you are joining from, please leave a message and say what city, what country. Leave your name, especially if you're on Instagram, because Instagram, the handles are quite complicated and I sometimes cannot make out what your actual name is. Also trying a slightly different setup today with my Instagram directly behind and slightly higher than my laptop. So if you're wondering why I'm looking up today, that's the reason, because I realized that sometimes I'm kind of looking to the side and it looks like I'm not talking to you guys, but I am talking to you guys. And then when I'm talking to my Instagram people, I'm looking over to the laptop and it looks like I'm not talking to you, but I'm talking to all of you today. So yeah, quick hellos here. Oh, I got some competition of love. Vitor, Ola. Um, that's going to be a challenge, isn't it? Jihan, my other brother from another mother in Turkey as well, said he loves me more than Ihan. I don't know if that's possible, Jihan, but I'm willing to let you guys fight it out. Happy Wednesday to you, Mrs. J. Rods. Guy Dibby, not sure what your name is. Angel, hi. Orlando, Florida in the house. Houston, Texas. Carla in the house. Maria from Egypt. Again, as always, one of my favorite things about doing live chats is seeing where everybody is from, because it's just a beautiful way to see how connected we are across the oceans and continents and everything. And that is one of the beauties of COVID, right? That we were all forced to get used to communicating online. And now all of a sudden we have all these beautiful, different connections. Salsa Del, hello to you too. Again, throw your location into the chat and I'll give you a shout out. Jackie, okay, cool. Orlando, Florida, Angel in the house. Wade from Queens, New York, one of my favorite people and one of my best students also. So before we get started, and I do have this really wild multiple microphones attached to me just to make sure that my audio is clear, but also a very precarious situation, because if I happen to not disconnect and I just move from this laptop, my desk, everything is going to come toppling down. And those of you who saw my live chat on my birthday, the middle of the night, 2-hour live chat, you know what happens when I don't set up properly and I try and set up during my live chat. Really funny. I think it's like at 1 minute and 30 seconds. You'll have a good laugh. So for those of you who are joining for the first time, or those of you who are returning, what are these live chats? These are my monthly ways to connect with all of you, to share some of the lessons and experiences that I've had through my life, the things that I've struggled with, and the lessons that I've found that have helped me conquer those obstacles and get through those struggles. And my goal with these live chats is ultimately to provide some of that information to all of you so that maybe you can apply it to your life as well. These live chats vary from dance related topics to things like today, where we're going to be talking about relationships and levels of commitment and interest and investment, and how we deal with resentment as a result of the expectations and disappointments that we may have, where our needs are not being met in those relationships. But you are always welcome to submit your questions. You can submit them in advance if you like, in the comments or in a DM to me. And if not, you can submit them in the comments of the replays as well. I tried something different with this live chat. So before this live chat, I actually posted a question about what makes you feel most connected or disconnected in your relationships and your friendships. And man, the comment thread was insane. Like, I was not expecting that much engagement and that much expression, of what all of you consider commitment, what you consider connection and disconnection in your friendships and relationships. So, first off, I would like to say a huge thank you to all of you who answered those. It helps because I'm going to be talking a little bit about those specific comments and my view and my approach to them. Um, in addition to that, also, there is this element of this live chat where the best way really is, of course, you're here listening, and I promise you I can talk the entire time. But if you have any questions, if you have any comments, if there is something that I've said that resonates with you, one of the best ways to show appreciation, at least the way I receive it, is to let me know. Right. So if you're in chat right now and I say something that makes sense, or it's something you can relate to, or something you have a follow up question to, just shoot that into the comments there. So if you're on Instagram, if you have a question, how can I see it? If you have a question, there's a question mark button there at the bottom that you can submit a question. It'll be easier for me to find your questions that way versus adding it just to the comment thread, because once people start entering the live chat, it just starts to roll and scroll up and it's harder for me to find. But yeah, so you can submit it there. Facebook and YouTube, you guys can just submit it in the comments and I can see it quite clearly here. Okay. So another couple of hellos here. Richie from Amsterdam. Hello, hello. Did you say Eisen? I'm guessing from Turkey. The name sounds very Turkish to me. How you were so relaxed while you're dancing. It's incredible. Like, you're dancing so smooth. For those of you actually who are here asking or wanting to ask anything about dance, you can always reach out to me directly. But also, don't forget to check out my platform, online courses, and my memberships and tutorials. Learn.magnagopal.com, or just go to my website and you will be able to see the tab for that information. So you can find all of that instruction so that you can also equally be as smooth as you say I appear when I dance. So appreciate that. Hi, Sunil. Hi, Carolina. I miss you too. All right, again, don't forget to tell me where you're from. Let me know. And pardon me for getting in your faces here on Facebook and YouTube as I'm trying to do the scrolly thing on Instagram. So today's topic. Last month's live chat, we talked about communication and some tips on effective communication. Today, we are going to be talking about the different levels of commitment that exist in the relationships that we have, and how sometimes a lack of clarity or a lack of communication of those different levels of commitment results in resentment and feelings of unfulfillment in those relationships. The reason I wanted to bring this up is because I am constantly, I cannot stress that enough, constantly encountering this in my own life. I would say I encountered it the most when it was COVID years, because COVID just provided a circumstance that was unreal, unimaginable, and just so many different variables in there that created a change in people that we could not have ever predicted, right? And so there's a lot that I learned from that. But in general, I realize that the connections that we have with people often result from a lack of communication, not setting our own boundaries, not explicitly expressing what we would like and what we would expect, and then ultimately feeling this unfulfillment and resentment towards them. So, personal experience first. There are tons of different levels of commitment, right? Now, I'll go into a couple of the categories that I kind of created. And if you think of any others, feel free to add them. I was able to create these categories in like everything starting with C. So if you can do that, even better. But feel free to add your own categories. So one of the one of the instances, or many of the instances, where I used to feel like I was pressured. So I've been on, as in all situations and everything I discuss, I've been on both the receiving end and the giving end, right? I've been on the side that feels unfulfilled and the other side that feels pressured. So one of the pressures that I remember experiencing was through my travels, right? With all my travels, I was meeting people constantly all over the world. And in those moments, in the circumstance of a Congress where you're just only focused on the Congress, there's no work, there's no anything else. Everything is about this dance event, everything is about being here, being present with the people that are around you. We would build some really beautiful connections with people. And in some cases, the connections that we built were meaningful. Some of them actually resulted in lifelong friendships that I can still feel grateful to have. And other connections were really more about the circumstance of the Congress, that we were just present there. Sorry, small interruption here. Instagram, can you guys hear me clearly? I heard a little clickety click click on my headphone, and I just want to make sure that you guys can hear me clearly over there. Let me know in the comments. Hopefully everything is okay. Patari from Germany. Yes, okay, fantastic. I'm just going to take your one yes, Carla, and just assume that everybody else can hear me. So going back to that. So with my Congress travels, there were many relationships that I had built in that moment with people. Yes, we might have exchanged phone numbers, we would have exchanged Facebooks and Facebook information, or whatever the case is, and stayed connected. Now, their relationship to me might have been more on a committed level, where they're like, wow, I met Magna and she seems really cool and down to earth. I would love to have a friendship with her. She seems like someone I could really be friends with. On my side, it's not to say that I didn't believe the same, or that they weren't of quality individuals that I could have friendships with. But for me, it was more circumstantial. It was a moment of that weekend that I was there and I was 100% present, 100% invested, but in that moment. And so when that moment ended, sure, I made these connections, but my interest in maintaining the connections and providing what was required for the level of commitment that the other person was looking for was not present. Right. And so I remember having some conversations like that. And sure enough, my lack of maturity in the past made me defensive, but I would feel pressured. I would feel pressured by these people that I had connected with, like, oh, we talked all of these important life topics and we shared so much with each other, and now like you're not available, you're not responsive, or you just reply here and there. And I would get defensive about my time, and I don't have time to do this and I don't have time to do that, I'm busy with this, I'm traveling again. But in reality, what it was, the honest truth was that, yes, I see value in you, but I'm not interested in that level of relationship with you, you know? And that might sound hard to hear, and sometimes even harder to say, but it's not that it's bad, right? We all have different levels of relationships. Not everybody, and I've said this many, many times in past live chats, not everybody is my best friend. I mean, what the hell would a best friend mean, if everybody's a best friend? I mean, the quality of your best friends, or the qualities of a romantic relationship, by nature, put them at a higher level of commitment than the other relationships and friendships in your life. And there are friendships that we have that are convenient. There are friendships that we have that are circumstantial. They're not bad friendships. It doesn't mean that the person doesn't have the value of, or any type of value, or that the person isn't worthy or deserving of that level of commitment. But it just happens to be that that is the case. So that was something with my travels that I had experienced. And again, like I said, my level of maturity at that time wasn't at the level that I was able to express that in a way that was respectful of the person that was telling me that they were feeling unfulfilled in that relationship with me, nor respectful of myself and what I was actually able to do, right? So a lot of times what ends up happening in these relationships where we feel this unfulfillment is assumptions and miscommunication. And so the key to me would be a couple of things. There's interest, there's capacity, there's clarity, there's communication, and there's alignment, right? So I will go into those things momentarily, but going into another personal experience, and maybe some of you guys can relate to this one. COVID, okay? How many people did we lose touch with during COVID or develop relationships with during COVID, whether that is friendships or intimate relationships, right? If you've been there and COVID really impacted your circle of friends, your network of friends, let me know in the comments. But for me, this was another moment of a misunderstanding on my part, possibly the other person's part, but definitely on my part. That's where I will take responsibility. Was a misunderstanding of what was the basis. Of course, my battery's dying. What was the basis of the relationship? COVID was the basis of the relationship. COVID was the circumstance of the relationship, right? If not for COVID, and this is a question you can ask yourself about the people that are in your lives that you are struggling to find some kind of connection with, and they're not giving you something back in return. If not for the moment, if not for the circumstance, if not for the convenience, would you invest in that relationship, right? And it's again, I have to stress this part. It's not to say that the person on the receiving end is not worthy, does not deserve the commitment, is a bad person. None of that. There's no value judgment here. The whole idea is about what is the circumstance surrounding your commitment and your interest, right? So, COVID for me obviously shut down many things, shut down the ability to travel and do the things that I was doing before, going to congresses regularly, teaching, interacting with my students, interacting with other dancers, interacting with my friends that also travel and other artists. It shut that down completely. And then there were no things to go out to because all the events and the venues and all of that stuff was closed as well. So what do we have? We had parks, right? We had parks that we can hang out in. And then we had the people that were relatively close who could make that commute to hang out with us, right? And I did. I made a lot of great friendships with people through COVID as a result of the limitations and restrictions that were present in society, in our community around the world, right? Now, some of those friendships and relationships have developed into something really beautiful, and they are committed on both sides. And I'm very, very thankful to the whole COVID circumstance for that. But other relationships, I started to feel personally a sense of resentment, a sense of unfulfillment, because here I was thinking, wow, like we spent all of this time together and this is amazing. And I'm getting so much out of this and I'm enjoying all of my moments with these people and learning about them and all of these things. And then as the COVID restrictions started to get relaxed and things started opening up, I was no longer a priority in many of these people's lives. Whereas for me, I was feeling like, whoa, all that time that we spent together, that's commitment, right? Like, I mean, I'm committed, I'm invested. Like, why aren't you? You know? And that um affected me quite deeply for some time. And so what I had to come to, the realization I arrived at was it was circumstantial. Again, the depth in the moment, right? It's not to take away from the depth in the moment. Whatever you shared, whatever you um, uh, did with each other and communicated to each other, and the amount of time that you might have spent with each other, it does not depreciate any of that in value. However, it was a circumstance that made those relationships possible. Now, sometimes through those circumstances, we meet people that we want to connect with, that we want to build with, and we invest and we put that effort and that energy into building that relationship. But sometimes it's really about the circumstance. And when you remove that circumstance from the picture, then you kind of lose the relationship, right? And so The reason I bring this up is because a lot of the comments that I got on Facebook, especially on Facebook, Instagram, you guys are good at commenting on like stories and stuff, but not as good as the people on Facebook. And maybe on Facebook, it's because you can see all the thread of comments. I'm not entirely sure. But anyways, Facebook, if you want to go and check my Facebook profile or my Facebook page, there's a long set of comments there that are really worth reading to see how other people view connection and disconnection in relationships. And what I'd noticed in almost all of them was there were standards for what you feel is connection to you and for a committed relationship, but there's no clarity in whether the other person is bringing the same or whether they view it in the same way. One of the users, let me just look this up real quick, Sagar, I don't know how I'm saying, if I'm saying this right, on my Facebook page, wrote a comment about the reason for being in a particular relationship or friendship is what's going to define whether it's worth fighting for that connection or just disconnect regardless of the situation or circumstances. So the reason has to be strong enough. And what I had replied to him was that the reason has to be the same, right? So let me go into now those categories of relationships. Okay, so we have 6 categories according to me. Now they're just random categories that I was able to put most of the relationships I have into those categories. So again, if you come up with something, like, please throw it into the chat, and I will be glad to share it with everybody else. But there's the category of committed relationships, where you have both parties that are intentional, they're both interested, they're both capable, and they're willing to make adjustments as necessary for the growth of that friendship or that relationship. Then you have convenient relationships. And convenient relationships, I would say, center around regular routines, right? So people you might see at the gym or on your commute or your grocery store worker or whatever, or at school or at work. But basically, these are regular routines that are convenient for you to meet and spend time and interact with people because of your schedule, and this is convenient, right? Then you have cohabitation, which is roommates. Roommates is like the easiest one I can come up with because I had that situation too, because I've had roommates in my past. Then you have the other connection, which is circumstantial. So kind of like convenience, but more on an irregular event basis. So it's not your regular routine. It's not something that you can repeat on a regular basis, but it's something that's irregular, something that is perhaps quite intense, like a congress, or when you travel, take a vacation, or something as circumstantial as like COVID, right? Which was a completely brand new, quite intense experience for everybody around the world. Then you have codependence. And codependence is relationships that are dependent on each other. So family relationships would fall into that category. Employers, employees, students, and teachers, and also your intimate relationships. And then finally, there's like a crooked, I'm going to call it crooked because I wanted to stay in the C category. So crooked relationships, which I would say are still intentional, right? But they're more opportunistic and often malicious. These are the ones that people are just in a relationship with you to get whatever it is that they want to get from you, right? And they have no desire for taking care of you, for not hurting you. They're just completely self-interested in whatever it is that they want. So what I've found is, other than crooked relationships, let's put that one aside, okay? Because I would say, again, like, that's malintent. But all the other categories that I expressed, none of those relationships are bad, inherently bad. We have convenient relationships that work perfectly, right? I see somebody at the gym all the time. We spend maybe 10, 15 minutes talking. Maybe after the workout, we hang out, grab a coffee or something. But in reality, the only reason that we're communicating is because we both happen to work out at the same location around the same times. And that's why we're making that connection. Neither one of us is committed to anything more, and it makes that a pleasant and mutually beneficial relationship. Cohabitation is another one, right? Like your roommates, you're going to see each other, you're going to be spending time with each other. You probably spend more time with each other than you might with your significant other or other best friends in your life. But it doesn't necessarily mean that there is a relationship there. It's just that you happen to live together. Would you be this person's friend if not for this living situation, right? Codependent relationships. Family is a perfect example. As I'm sure many people have, a very dysfunctional family, and there are relationships that I have in my life, not necessarily because I choose to have them, but because they are what they are. I have that relationship. I have parents, I have siblings, and that's what my situation is, right? I mean, I love my sister, so different. But the idea is that we have these relationships with people that where we have some dependency on in terms of the connection that we have with them. Employer-employee relationships are the same. There's a dependence there from an employer to an employee for getting something done, dependence from the employee to the employer to get paid for their living, and so you create these relationships. The problem is when we have committed relationships and someone on the other side has a non-committed relationship. So any of those other categories, because a committed relationship puts interest into the relationships, is a conscious, intentional investment into seeing that relationship grow, right? Into building that relationship, into adapting to whatever struggles and situations and hardships might come about, to actually attacking those things in a concerted manner to find a solution that will ultimately help both people and help their relationship together. So my challenge, my problem, and my resolution to those problems was basically realizing when I was approaching a relationship in a committed fashion, but the other person was approaching it from a view of convenience or codependence or circumstance, right? So I'm going to go into a couple of comments that I had read. So, for example, there's one person on my Facebook profile, Jennifer, who had written, "When your friends never text or call you, not all friends, but you get tired of reaching out to people who never call or text, it speaks volumes. It's time to move on with your life." My reply to this person, Jennifer, was that I would agree in some instances, but I'll admit that I'm guilty of that myself with good reason. So I tend to let it slide with others as well. The reply to that was, well, when you have deaths in your life, your parents or best friend don't call or come to see you, and it speaks volumes. And I do forgive them, but wow, right? My circle is getting smaller. And this would be, this is now committed relationships that you have with other people who are also committed, but they're not necessarily available the way you are available or the way you need it. And I will go to some of the relationships that I have in my life. The whole texting thing, for example, I have like tons of super, super close friends, people I trust with, my innermost struggles, who are living in other parts of the world, who I cannot communicate with on a regular basis. But I know that they're there. I've also had really difficult times in my life, and people weren't there. They were not communicating with me, right? Whereas if I know that someone's going through something, I would usually reach out. But sometimes what I learned is you don't know how to reach out, right? Sometimes it's not a matter of the lack of commitment or the lack of interest in the relationship and the care, but sometimes you just feel incapable of bringing anything of value to the equation, not realizing the fact that your presence itself alone is the value, right? Sometimes we don't realize that. We feel like we need to do something, say something, and we don't know what to do and we don't know what to say. And I've been, again, on the receiving end of that when I've gone through some really, really difficult moments in my life and been like, whoa, my best friend didn't even text me. Like I mentioned this happened and like nothing other than I'm sorry. Like, I started to kind of make make a mountain out of a molehill type of thing. And I've also been on that other flip side where I see someone struggling with something. Maybe it's a death in the family, maybe it's a loss of a job or something, and I don't know what to say, right? So, my comment to Jennifer and to anybody else who's feeling that, right? Because, like I said, I felt it too, is to understand that when you have a committed relationship, there are many other factors that are going to prove to you that there is a commitment there. If you specifically put it on certain elements, like certain levels of communication, certain schedule of communication, or certain ways of communicating, you might run into issues with that relationship. Not that the relationship is breaking, but that you are adding unnecessary stressors and pressures to the relationship. Not that it's wrong that you want those things. And this goes to another comment by another friend of mine, actually on Facebook, Dimitri, who talked about what did he say here? Said expectations are the number one destroyer of friendships and relationships. Expect nothing, you'll end up the happiest with lots of friends and connections. To a degree. I don't think it's wrong to have expectations. I don't think it's wrong to want something from the relationships that you have. And the reason I say that is because our expectations are the standards that we are setting for ourselves, right? I expect someone to speak to me in a respectful manner. I don't think that that's an expectation that I'm not allowed to have or that I shouldn't have. And that because I have that expectation and someone speaks to me in a manner that's disrespectful, that it's my problem, that I'm disappointed in the relationship. No, it is our problem, and that relationship just won't exist if those expectations aren't met. Right. So there's nothing wrong with those expectations. It is okay for you to have them. It is okay for you to have a certain standard for the relationships in your life. But the first step is to have the clarity of like, what kind of relationship are you pursuing and what kind of relationship is the other person pursuing? And then based on that, if they're both committed relationships, then if you have these certain expectations, you need to communicate them, because there's no one's a real mind reader in today's world. Okay. As good as they may be with people, as well as they may interact with others, they're not mind readers. No one's a mind reader. So if you really truly want to have the best relationship and you have certain standards for that relationship, that level of relationship, then you have to communicate it. And if you can't communicate it, then the disappointment really is brought upon by yourself. And the reason I say that is because our standards for what we think a healthy relationship is varies person to person. Everyone is different in what they think a healthy relationship looks like. Either it is actually genuinely healthy by global standards, or it's healthy based on their own experiences. And those experiences might have been really bad experiences, unfortunately, but that's what has now established the standard and the bar for their relationships, right? So whatever those standards are, we have to understand that people have different standards. And two, the only way for us to actually meet at a point that we can communicate and build, or that we can grow together, is to actually start the communication, right? So I'm just going to address some comments here really quickly. If you have any questions so far, feel free to show it, throw it into the comments. I have a couple more points that I'd like to share with you that I hope will help you guys with your relationships and friendships. Okay, so boom. Puerto Rico in the house. I've learned, Swetha said, I've learned that people can only fulfill 40% of your expectations, fulfill your expectations only 40% of the time. Well, that might be the case, but sometimes, depending on how you express those expectations, please don't die. Sometimes, depending on the way you express those expectations, you might be surprised at how much more they can fulfill. The reason I say this is because I've had a couple of instances with friends and also in intimate relationships. Again, I am going to go back to myself and say that, as well presented as I am, this comes from experience, right? And this comes from a lot of introspection and and not sitting there and saying, oh, what happened in my life, but asking, where did I go wrong? Like, what did I do? What could I have done better? What am I learning from this? And how can I use it to improve myself and the relationships and everything that's happening in my life, right? But in terms of those expectations, in the past, I used to have expectations and just keep them to myself, right? I would have expectations, someone would not meet my expectations, and I would just be disappointed, and I would make an executive decision to end that relationship or get upset or whatever the case is, right? Whereas now I'm much better at taking a breath, feeling that disappointment, and then instead of feeling the disappointment and sitting on that disappointment, I am instead asking, have I communicated this to this person? Have I spoken openly about this? Is this something that they might have misunderstood or never even had a need to understand in the first place? And this is why this is happening. And in almost every case, I realize that I have not communicated, that whatever is the issue has not been discussed. And as a result, there's my expectation and there's a failure to fulfill that. And as a result, there's a disappointment. So in the situations where I have taken the time to actually um, express myself to that person and say, like, hey, listen, this happened and this bothered me for these reasons, and I don't expect this from a friend. I expect X, Y, and Z instead. And then also present to them the not just the, hey, this is what I want, but what do you see as a healthy relationship? Is this something you would appreciate if I did? And is this something that you are capable of giving to me? Right? Because that is another element in this whole equation, is we can have the interest, we can be committed to a relationship. Again, commitment being that highest level of mutual connection, right? Both parties are committed, both people are interested in each other, both people want to grow with each other together. Okay, you can have the interest, you can have the commitment, but you might not have the capacity, and capacity is key. And capacity is a roller coaster. Okay, some days I am feeling on top of the world, and I mean, I could sit there for the whole 24 hours of the day and answer questions and try and help people and be there for everybody. And some days I'm dealing with my own shit, and I don't have the bandwidth to take care of yours too. It doesn't mean that you're not important to me. It doesn't mean that I'm not interested in you. It doesn't mean that I don't want to make time for you, but I can't. I can't right now. I can't. Right. And so capacity is really key. And so when you do communicate, if it is a situation where you're dealing with something with someone where you feel like you're being disappointed, you don't feel fulfilled, first step is understanding, reflecting on yourself. Well, why am I not feeling fulfilled in this situation? um, what is the issue? Have I communicated? Have we discussed this issue? And then what do I want? And then in the nicest, most respectful, polite way, communicate that to the other person without pointing the finger. And when you communicate that, to then ask that person, is this something you're capable of? I know these are all these things that are happening in your life. Like, for example, for me, over COVID, right? Like back to the friendship, over COVID, everybody had time for everything, right? We played sports, we hung out, we did this, we did that. We spent so much time in a week together. When COVID restrictions eased up, people went back to work. People went back to commuting to work. Now they have all these other things that they have to take care of. Time is not the same. Time is no longer available the way it was available before. Now, let's say you're talking to someone who's lost a job, right? And well, guess what? Lots of free time on their hand, right? And this person's like, hey, let's hang out, let's do this, let's do that. And you're like, I gotta work. I can't do that, And then when you say no so many times, this person now feels like you're no longer interested in the relationship. When in reality, you don't have the capacity. You can't, right? So it is really important for us to understand what we are asking for, and then also um, to put it up against the reality of life and the other person and what they're going through, and whether that is a reasonable request, right? And it's not to say that any of our requests are necessarily unreasonable, but not everyone is going to be able to meet them. And if you are hard stuck on something hard, like this is deal breaker, then maybe you break the deal. Maybe you break that relationship with that person. If you can't find that space where you can actually meet on the same level. Suedo also asks, what are your tips to keep your teeth so white? um, I think I told this about a dentist, my dentist story. This is really random. I'm going to digress for a small second. So when I was younger, and I had a lot of cavities, my dentist, when they do fillings in your teeth, there's, I guess, different grades or scales of tooth color. And there are two types, I believe. There's A and B, and A is a yellow tint, and then B is a blue tint. And this is, again, forgive me, any dentists here, if I'm saying the wrong thing, like, feel free to correct me. I don't, this is when I was like 16. I don't really remember in super detail. But basically, A1 is the whitest on the A scale, and then B1 is the whitest on the gray or blue scale, whatever. And B3, I think, was whiter than A1. So these are your natural colors of teeth, not the, glow in the dark whitening teeth, whatever colors. And apparently, when he was doing my fillings and my cavities and my, terrible taking care of my teeth, he said that my teeth were B1s. And so naturally, they were whiter than the average person's teeth because most people have A scale, which is a yellow tint to the teeth. So genetics, I guess, but I don't really remember my parents having such white teeth. So I don't know, grandparents, maybe. And brushing, flossing. Okay, I can definitely stand by those two things as ways to keep your teeth white. Tall guy said, I just try not to have high expectations. Again, let me just address that before I come into Facebook and YouTube. Okay, it's not about having high expectations. It's about communicating your expectations, because what you think are high expectations might not be high. But if I don't know what it is that you're looking for and what it is that would satisfy you, and you don't have a chance to understand what my level of commitment and interest is in you, in us, then you don't know what I'm capable of, right? Like, I can tell you, in relationships, especially romantic relationships, but also friendships, like, friends who meant the world to me, people who meant the world to me, I would bend over backwards for them. But I don't know what you need, right? Me, I might already be thinking I'm bending over backwards. And I might think that everything that I'm doing is sufficient for this relationship to continue, maintain, and to grow, right? But if you tell me, hey, listen, I wish that we talked more, right? Um, and I just feel like we're not communicating enough, and it means a lot to me for a friendship in my life to have that level of communication regularly. Then you might think, oh, that's high expectations to say, oh, to expect to talk to your friend every week or something like that, right? And many of my best friends, I do not talk to them even monthly. Sometimes I talk to them twice a year. That does not change at all the level of commitment we have to each other, because we understand, we've communicated, and we accept our situation, and we understand that we are there for each other, right? But if you tell me, listen, I need to be able to talk to you at least once a week, yeah, maybe it's going to be weird, but I'll schedule the time because you mean something to me, right? That might be high expectations to expect that from somebody, to check in on you, whatever, once a week or whatever. But it's not if the person's truly interested and if they're capable of it, right? If you're saying, for example, now on the other hand, when I used to travel, for example, someone's like, hey, yeah, let's talk every Saturday. No, I can't. I'm sorry. I'm traveling on the weekends. I'm in the middle of workshops. I'm in a different time zone. I have no idea what my Saturday looks like ever when I was traveling every single weekend. So no, I can't give that to you. Now you can accept that as a limitation based on my circumstances, or you can say, well, Saturdays is when I talk to my friends, and if I can't talk to you, then you're not my friend, and so be it, right? Okay, need to have patience. Yes, we all do. Okay, so I'm gonna come over here real quick. Ooh, lots of good comments, and some people to block. One challenge with YouTube is, like, I get really weird comments sometimes. I got a who are you, what are you, why are you? Yeah. Maria said it can be hard because it is sudden and not expected, but I think personally the best way is to be true to oneself. Absolutely. Um, Gita, hi. Milan said, I've had the same issue. I just had to be mindful of the time and circumstances of COVID, and it helped me put everything in perspective. Absolutely. So, a big part of addressing your commitments and your different levels of investment in relationships is putting things into perspective. Um, Gita said, well, sadly, I just lost a relationship of 5 years. Most of the times I just go with the flow. If the person suddenly distances himself or herself with words or actions, I let go. I want both of us to be happy. Before letting go, I do try to my heart's content, but then I let go when it doesn't seem like going anywhere. Never have I had to be back again after the last disconnection. I just keep myself busy with things that make me happy. It works. And that's a beautiful thing. Sometimes, again, there's an understanding, there's a level of understanding of each other, there's a level of compromise that needs to exist as well. But at the end of the day, if you need something, if this is crucial to you, like intimate relationships, for me, for example, I need physical affection, right? I realize that I could try and pretend for as long as possible that it's not important to me, that I don't get hugged and kissed, but it's bloody important to me. And so if that doesn't exist, like, it's better to just let it go. That's not a high expectation. That's not a high standard. That is my standard. That is what I need to feel fulfilled. And I am entitled to want the things that I want that make me feel right and make me feel happy, and so are all of us, right? But if we don't communicate that, we don't give the person the opportunity to step up and show us whether they can and whether they want to, you know? Wade said, I believe it is a good thing to have expectations from a connection. If you don't aim for an outcome, you wouldn't hit what you truly want, and you would allow life that is chosen for you. Yeah, absolutely. Oscar said, ownership. Agree with your perspective on focusing on the change you can make within yourself and grow. Yep. And I believe, Wade, believe it is a good thing to add expectation when you're building a connection. If you don't, yeah, I got that was twice the same comment, I think. And even if you don't hit the target, it's better to be fully in control, and a life lesson would be gained from it. Hyde and Mike, you are 40 minutes into the live chat. If you arrived a little bit earlier, I think you would know exactly what the topic is, but you should be able to see it in the description as well. Elizabeth said, so true. I rarely speak to my closest friends regularly, but those conversations, when they do happen, are always so meaningful. Absolutely. So if you have any further comments, feel free to throw them in there. Also, if you would like to support the channel on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, it's at Magna Gopal, pretty easy to find. Show me or throw me a subscribe, hit like, share the video if you feel like there was anything of value. And super, super important, as I always request, if you've been here, especially if you've been here for the whole time, or even if you are watching this as a replay, the feedback form means so much to me, because again, I am doing the live chats because I am learning lessons in my life that I think are valuable, that have helped me improve my life and my relationships. And I would like to share that with all of you so that you can feel more empowered in your lives as well. But I don't know if I'm getting my point across and if I am actually doing that service or not without the feedback that I get from all of you. So if you are watching this live or in a replay, please complete the feedback form. You can find it on my website, magnagopal.com, in the contact section. Or if not, you can go to magnagopal.com/feedback. Okay, that will take you directly to the live chat feedback form. And I will take you 5 minutes or less, and it would mean the world to me. Okay, so if you want to share your thanks that way, that's really, really easy and free. If you would like to support the channel in another way, on Instagram, I believe you can buy badges, and on YouTube and on Facebook, if you go into the comments, there's a little link for coffee. It's a cute little way of buying me a coffee to support. So right now I'm drinking a pink drink, this pink lemonade, not a coffee, but I'll buy that coffee if you buy that coffee first. So, tart. So to sum up, there are different types of relationships that we have, different types of connections, rather, that we have. Committed, when two people are committed to each other, it allows and provides for kind of the basis and the foundation for growth and for a lot of happiness and fulfillment. You have convenient relationships, cohabitated relationships, circumstantial relationships, codependent relationships, and the crooked relationships, which again, ideally we want to avoid those as best as we can. But all of these other types of connections that we have with people are not bad, inherently bad. They only cause problems when you have a committed relationship, or a person who's committed, rather, to that relationship, and you have the other person who is viewing it as something that's convenient or that's circumstantial. The best way to attack these things is clarity first, right? Oftentimes we don't know what we want. And sometimes we say what we want, but we don't take the actions that are necessary to getting those things. So the first step is to always understand ourselves, to increase that self awareness, to find out where we're at, to know what we want, to set those expectations for ourselves as well, right? Then the second part is the interest. Like, what are we interested in, and what is our reason, right, to be interested in this particular relationship with someone? Are we interested based on the fact that it happens to be there right now, which is convenient, or are we interested in really learning about this person and growing with this person, and contributing in some meaningful way to their lives and having them do the same, right? And depending on what type of connection we have, committed or those any of those other C's, our level of interest is going to be different as well, right? So it's important for us to assess that, whether we have that interest and whether that other person has that interest. And then there's the capacity. So even though you have that clarity, even though you know exactly what you want and exactly what you want to ask for, and you've got the interest in that, there's the capacity. Like, we are not always capable of doing something just because that is life. Unfortunately, that's just life, right? And that is the beauty of life, if I must say so, because we end up learning so many other things about ourselves in the process. So capacity is really important. And that is something where empathy comes into play in the relationships that you have. Because if you are empathetic and you can see that someone is going through a rough time and that they don't have the capacity to meet you where you want them to meet you, you can still save a relationship just by the fact that you are not putting pressure onto an already pressured person, right? Um, and then finally, there's the communication, right? Or not finally, rather, but communication is key to. I need a new laptop battery. Communication is key to getting forward, to moving forward personally in our personal growth, but also moving forward with other people in our relationships with them. And when you communicate, and I would recommend you guys go and check out last month's live chat on tips for effective communication. That one, we really went into a lot of detail on how and when and what to say, tone and wording, timing, lots of details there. But communication is important in terms of being comfortable having the expectations that you have and the standards that you have, and making sure that is understood from the other party as well, so that there is less room for disappointment, less room for a lack of fulfillment, less room for resentment, you know. And the better you get at communicating, and the better you get, not just at communicating, learning to communicate what it is that you're feeling, but learning to ask the right questions and learning to listen, the easier it becomes for you to say, you know what, I was really committed to this relationship, but I can see that this was more convenient to you. And, I'm okay with the convenience. So I'm no longer going to stay at this level of commitment. I'm going to bring it down to a connection of convenience. And now it becomes much easier for you to relate, right? And then finally, there's alignment. Like, ultimately, like I said before, there's nothing wrong with any of these levels of connection. They happen in life. They just do. There's nothing wrong with them. There doesn't speak ill of anyone who's in a relationship for convenience versus someone who's committed. Okay. um but if you're on different levels, that's where you're going to encounter stress. That's where you're going to encounter confusion and problems and resentment. So alignment is super key. And then last thing is that everything is kind of variable, right? There are times when we feel super committed to something, and then all of a sudden life hits us, and now our commitment level isn't really there. And now we look at this more as a connection of convenience. Yeah, I'll reach out when I feel like it because it's not convenient to me right now, and I don't want to invest any more effort because I'm no longer committed. Right. So people fluctuate through those levels of connection, just as they fluctuate in levels potentially in levels of interest, even in levels of clarity, right? Like what I thought I wanted, what I knew I wanted 10 years ago is different from what I want today and what I would express that I want today, right? And so we've got to be flexible. We've got to be adaptable to all of these situations in life to kind of maximize what we can get out of our relationship. Gino said, same with dancing as relationships itself. Synchronization, communicate, listen, understand, all in one song. And I always say this, dance is a microcosm for life, for all of our relationships. And it really shows us the the things we assume, right? What we think a person can do, and how do we deal with it when we realize they can't do that? Do we force them through it? Do we get frustrated? Do we get resentful of the fact that we said yes to this dance in the first place? Or do we adapt? Or do we ask, you know, what would you like to do? What feels comfortable to you? Does that feel uncomfortable? Would you prefer I do it this way, for example? Right? Like we do so well on the dance floor sometimes, and we forget to take those lessons back into our lives to improve our lives, just as we have amazing dances and can improve our dances with other people. Um, Another comment on Instagram: communication, understanding, capacity, and expectations. Got it. Feels like I knew this, but you articulated it very well. Made so much sense. Thank you. My pleasure, Carla. Um, and yes, it is about the dance connection, though I haven't danced in a long while. So again, I would like to thank you all for sticking around for today's live chat. Please check out my website, magnagopal.com. There are online courses and memberships and tutorials that relate to dance, but also to mindset. And all of this is really ultimately mindset, our ability to shift our perspective so that we can maximize the enjoyment and feel more empowered in our lives. You can check out those courses and those tutorials on the membership on my website. And please, if you have a moment, complete the feedback form, magnagopal.com/feedback, or you can go to the contact section on my page, and you'll see the feedback forms there as well. Other than that, if you have any questions, the best place to submit the questions is in the feedback form. Okay. The reason is because I have everything in one place versus me trying to go to a comment here and a comment there and find this post and find that post. On the feedback form, everything is in one place. It's very easy for me to go through that and then decide what the next topic will be. But as always, I am here. Like, my purpose in life, I've realized, is the Empowered with Magna purpose is to empower others in whatever ways I can, whether that is through dance, whether that's through fitness, or whether that's through mindset and communication. And these live chats are one of those avenues that I can pursue to do that and to fulfill that kind of life purpose of mine. But your feedback makes a huge difference in letting me know whether I am getting that done or not. Okay. So Gina said, you can't, in a few strings in your live content today, can't explain all, but I'm not sure what you were trying to say there, Gino, but if you complete the feedback form, you can write out your question or your thoughts in more detail there. Okay. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your afternoon. Thank you for joining me this Wednesday. Also, if you have a different time suggestion for the live chats, would have to be kind of during the week, let me know in the feedback form. Okay. And good luck with your relationships. And I hope that today's live chat or this replay, if you're watching the replay, I hope that you can kind of take a look at the relationships in your life, the friendships or the intimate relationships you have in your life, and especially where you feel frustrated, and look at it and say, how am I approaching it? How is this other person approaching it? Do I feel like this is not fair and not equitable? If so, what am I feeling? Where's the real disappointment? What do I want? Has this been communicated with this person? How can I best communicate with this person? And is this person even capable But before I make that judgment on whether they're capable, let me ask. Let me communicate what I want. Let me ask them if they're capable, if they're interested. And if they are, if they say yes, then you give it a chance and you see where it goes. And if they aren't, nothing bad about that person because someone's not capable of giving you what you want. There's nothing bad about that person. It's just life. This is just where they are, and this is just where you are. And there are many times that I have not been capable, for whatever reason, to bring my best to a relationship. Doesn't make me a worse person, but it did not contribute to a healthy relationship. And the best thing was either for distance in that relationship or the end of that relationship in that moment in my life. And we're all better for it. I'm better for it. I've grown, I've learned, and so has that other person. So yeah. And don't forget to hit subscribe. Please, please, please support the YouTube channel, especially trying to grow the subscribers there. So if you have anyone who likes this stuff, send them over there. There's lots of clips. There's lots of dance videos. There's lots of information on there, empowered content, and all the live chats. The replays are also there. And thanks to our lovely Wade, who is in the Facebook chats, I think, or YouTube chat. He often, when he goes through the replay, goes through all the timestamps and puts them in the comments. So now when you go and watch those live chats that he's timestamped, you have chapters. So you can actually forward through the live chat to get to the point that you want to actually listen to or rewatch. So big thanks to Wade for coming through in ways that I could never have imagined. And I don't think I could ever share how grateful I am to you. So thank you to everybody. Have a lovely rest of your week. And I will catch you in our next live chat, which will be on November 2nd, Wednesday, November 2nd. If you have any suggestions for the topics, let me know. DM me or, again, feedback form. Thank you, Wade. Thanks for sharing. Learned a couple of new perspectives to apply to my life. Love it. Thank you, guys. Have a great day. Bye, Instagram. Bye, folks. And of course, the multiple ways of trying to get out of a live chat. Oh, also for the person who asked about the white teeth, it helps when you have a nice bright white light sticking in your face. And if your teeth are glossy, then it just reflects that too. All right, bye guys.